When I came home, I told everything to my parents. They gave me tea and some kind of very strange tincture, strong and bitter, which presently made me feel a little better. My parents took me to my room, and they stayed downstairs to talk about the situation. After that, the tincture, I felt really strange. On the one hand, I wanted to sleep. I was relaxed and barely understood anything. On the other hand, I was torn apart by my emotions, by curiosity, by fear, by sorrow, by anxiety, by everything. And I wasn't the only one who felt bad. Everyone was leaving school with faces the color of our northern sea. Even Trivy wasn't himself and stayed silent the whole way. That look. In the darkness, as if I was falling asleep, his stare kept flashing before my eyes. It would pass, I'd close my eyes again, relax, and there he was again. And again, that person. And again, my teacher's face right there in the water. Before falling asleep, I thought about Sandria because she probably didn't know about this yet. I wonder if she'll want to see it. Will she be creeped out or curious? With these thoughts completely exhausted, I finally fell asleep, although it wasn't even evening yet. Next day, I didn't go to school. Nor did I the day after that. We were given a week off. They also said that the school would move to another building, a wooden one, even smaller than the one we were in. The new building was located near the graveyard, where we buried everyone. No one was allowed near the old building. It was guarded. But of course, everyone wanted to see what the students had actually seen in the water. Could it really be that teacher had drowned? Or was it the teacher's brother? Maybe it was a water spirit? Or a sea devil? I heard so many versions that I wanted to see it myself. Passing by, it was hard to make anything out because everything was blocked off by a hastily built fence, and guards were always on duty. But I still managed to sneak a glimpse out of the corner of my eye what had changed so much there, and what they were guarding us from. And there was something to guard us from. Oh, there's more! When we first saw the head, you could barely see the eyes. Now this person, who looked ever more like our teacher, was visible up to the elbows out of the water. They had very strange dark green skin. The one who looked so much like the teacher kept staring straight ahead, not reacting to the guards or anything else. Next to them, another head had appeared. Just like the last time, only the eyes were visible. I didn't have the time to figure out who they reminded me of, as a guard rushed over and told me to leave immediately and mind my own business. I shouldn't have looked at what was going on there. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents anything and didn't eat. I went straight to my room. As soon as the door closed, I started feeling really unwell. Everything inside me was burning so much that it hurt to breathe. I grabbed my chest and sat down to the edge of the bed. I was on the verge of fainting. Warm sweat was dripping from my forehead onto the floor, and everything in front of my eyes was doubling. What did I just see? I was terrified, waiting for night to fall, because I knew full well that this would be the worst night of my life. I wouldn't be able to close my eyes. I wouldn't be able to close my eyes even for a second. The teacher, no, that thing, As soon as darkness fell, it felt like no matter where I looked, it would be behind me. Absolutely. So I pressed myself against the wall, hugged my pillow, and stared straight into the darkness. I knew he wouldn't appear behind my back. That's why I would have to keep my eyes straight ahead. He will definitely come. He will definitely appear, I kept thinking. As I was convinced his eyes glowed in the dark, so sometimes I got stared at the stars when I peeked through the clouds. I didn't sleep for a long time that night. I kept thinking where I should run when he appears. Or maybe not run, maybe fight back. But with what? A pillow? Maybe I should go to my parents and sleep with them. Or ask them for that bitter, strong drink. What should I do? What? These thoughts were driving me crazy. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt. I stayed alert, not closing my eyes, jumping at every sound. Someone ran quickly past our house. Frightened, I jumped out of bed and fell out through the wooden floor. Strange that my parents didn't hear me. Of course, it was probably just a fox, or a bear, or a hare, but at that moment I was sure it had been the man from the sea. I ran to the window, but I couldn't see anything at all, except for a few stars. Trembling and twitching, I sat on the bed and stayed awake for a whole while longer, until all my strength left me and I had no choice but to pass out. I couldn't wake up for a long time. It was hard for my father to get me out of bed, but he managed to do so. Today I was supposed to help him. I don't know how quickly he realized that I was completely useless in this state, but he sent me to rest long before lunch. Once again, I didn't eat anything, even though my mom had cooked a lot of delicious food. I couldn't go back to my room after last night, and going outside was scary too. I don't know why, it just was. Mom also soon left for work, and I was left in the house alone, completely alone. And even though staying in my room wasn't an option, I wandered around the first floor, going through every room there was. Even though I was tired and really wanted to sleep, I thought it was easier to keep walking and think about my own stuff. Because whenever I sat down to rest, even for a minute, those thoughts, those images, all that terrifying stuff would come back and crash over me like a wave. This went on until my eyes landed on the bookshelf. One of the books had a very strange yellow cover. My parents loved reading. They had a whole collection of books. For some reason, I didn't inherit that love at all. I sat down to read. It was a collection of southern fairy tales. But these weren't tales from the southern. They were tales from our southern lands, which meant the northern ones. I explained that weirdly, but let's leave it at that. The language it was written in was very simple. It read quickly. At first I kept getting distracted. Sometimes it felt like someone was watching me from the window, or like I heard footsteps behind the doors, or maybe even inside the house itself. I just had to wait it out until the reading process fully pulled me in. The first tale was about the small nation of the Pilgrims, who lived or used to live in the south of Estonia. It wasn't completely clear from the text. They are short in stature, something between humans and gnomes, but all of them have a large trunk, just like an elephant. They live in the forest of that region, and they drink water from the local lakes using their trunks, again just like elephants. Their houses are very small and hard to find for humans or other predators because the pilgrims are skilled at hiding them. So skilled, in fact, that once 3 children got lost and couldn't find their way home. They had to wander through the forest in search of the shelters or someone from their kind. The worst enemy of all pilgrims isn't the bear, not even the humans. It's an evil witch who lives in those woods. She's very tall and can disguise herself as a tree, and when one of the pilgrims walks by, she snatches them and carries them off to her hut. While I was reading all this, I kept thinking, what do the ones who live underwater in the middle of the Northern Sea look like? Maybe they have trunks too. I wonder what they need them for. To drink seawater? Actually, that could be possible, because the Northern Sea is much less salty than any other sea in the world. The second tale, or rather, it was more of a short story or novel. So the second tale was about strangers from the east. On the eastern border of the village, there was a large hill. There wasn't a single tree or stone on it, only grass grew there. On the day of summer solace, at sunset, late at night, some unknown people would come there and stand until dawn. No one knew who they were, whether they came from, or why they came. Anyone who approached to ask them why they were there, or anyone who approached to ask them where they were from, once they got an answer, they would join the strangers and leave with them that night to their village. What a creepy tale. Is this really something kids should be reading? Why does no one think about the consequences? Terrifying. In this way, I read that book all the way until evening. Different tales, stories, fables, and I didn't get bored of it for even a minute. An amazing feeling. I had never done something all day long without getting tired of it. That night, too, I couldn't fall asleep for a long time, but not because I was scared. It was because of the book, which I ended up finishing. The next day, the weather was nice. I woke up very early, even though I had gone to bed really late. I helped my parents make breakfast. I did a bit of work too. I was planning to spend the whole day with them, since the weather was good, but then, unexpectedly, Chivy came over. He said he wanted to stop by and check how Sandria was doing, and whether she knew what was going on. Sandria. I'd completely forgotten about her. So much had happened. I didn't even have a minute to think about her. And we had planned so many things together. Thought about where to go, what to do. My parents let me go, and if they didn't, Trivy had already had an escape plan. So we headed to our house, which was not far from the school. Goosebumps ran down my body as we passed that place. I remember what I had seen behind the fence that day, and told Trivy about it. He felt both creeped out and intrigued to see it for himself, but I convinced him to go alone because I had absolutely no desire to go back there and see all of that again. I'd rather wait for some kind of explanation. Sanjay was getting worse. They barely let us into their house. She was lying in her bed and looked like one of those medieval princesses from the southern fairy tales. The kind that's locked away in a tower with a dragon. According to her, she could barely move and she couldn't feel her legs. She could only get around using a wheelchair or a cane. I had no other option. I asked her parents if they could take her to the peninsula so she could at least see something. They promised me they would think about it. I have nothing more to write about than that meeting. Not long ago, I was afraid of monsters, of strange creatures from the middle of the sea. Now I have completely forgotten about them. There was a pleasant taste in my mouth. It's hard to describe the feeling you get when you see a person who can't move. What is it, pity, grief? Chivy wasn't himself either. He didn't even suggest looking at the sea again. We silently went our separate ways, each to our own home. The holidays were over. The good weather was over too. The school had moved to a new building. It was right in front of the kirk. I didn't know how I got so lucky, but once again I was sitting by the window. But now, instead of the sea, I saw trees and graves. Everyone at school was whispering about what happened in the sea. Nobody had forgotten it yet. Chivy was gathering people to sneak into the old school building at night and see everything for themselves. But everything was still there, just as it had been. For the second day in a row, I was getting good grades at school. Also, for the second day in a row, the weather was bad. During the holidays and all my free time, I had been studying, reading a lot. It helped me. The holiday had long since ended, but Sandra still hadn't come back to school. I should visit her, ask how she's doing. Besides, I have so much to tell her, and so much to ask because no one else shares my new literacy and scientific interests. After the second lesson, Trivy came. Or, to be precisely, ran in. He said I had to see something immediately. For some reason, I decided to believe him, and I wasn't in the mood to stay in the school any longer, so we ditched and left. It had been a while since I skipped school. According to him, he had been terribly bored and wandered a bit farther, near the rocky beach. And there, a shark had washed up on shore. It had smashed against the sharp rocks and was still lying there. A shark? What? Are there even sharks in our sea? I wondered that until we reached the place. It really was a shark. A huge one, the size of 5 adult seals. Its eyes were open, and massive teeth stuck out of its mouth. I don't know what impressed me the most. The dead shark with huge teeth, those people in the water, or the motionless person who longs so deeply to see the world. Together with Trivy, we decided to walk along the shore to report it to the police. Halfway there, we changed our minds, because the police might ask why we weren't in school. We needed to kill a few more hours. So we sat on the beach, tossed stones, told each other stories, talked about life. That's how it was until suddenly a strong wind picked up, and the waves grew so big that one almost swept us into the sea. A storm was beginning. It became dangerous to stay on the shore, so we decided to head back to the village. Or at least take cover in the forest. Just before we left the beach, I noticed something in the water. Not something. Someone. There was someone there, standing not far from the shore. A fisherman? Or someone in need of help? What could a person possibly be doing in such weather, half naked in the water? No, it couldn't be. No. The body was about our age, only with very dark skin and almost no hair. From the water, only his shoulders were visible. The same cold stare, completely void of any emotion. Those same eyes that looked straight ahead and noticed nothing around them. Chevy noticed it first. I didn't want to admit it, although I had the same thoughts. Despite the waves and bad weather, you could make out his face, and it looked terrifyingly like Irvin's. What? How? What the hell? A dark green human-like figure in the sea, with eyes just like Irvin's. Once again, I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. I was afraid it would come to me in my sleep. As soon as I closed my eyes, that image appeared before me. It felt like I heard his voice several times during the night. Or was it the singing of night birds? How did he end up there? Could it be that his parents threw him into the sea and told everyone they had killed him? Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe it wasn't him. But Chivy saw him too. Could we both be wrong? A shared hallucination? That must be a thing, right? This night, I didn't fall asleep at all. Nor the next one. On the third day without sleep, having refused to eat, I could barely move my legs to get to school. Suddenly, from under the fence of someone's house, a head appeared. A dog, I thought. But do dogs know how to speak human language? On the way back, at the same spot, I heard the familiar voice again. There was no one nearby. The house was locked, the windows were shut. Then who was speaking? At school, we were warned not to go to the beach. For now, the area would be guarded. It was also forbidden to walk in the forest near the sea. The youngest student in our class was Slurnky, a shy, quiet boy. He didn't talk to anyone, always sat alone, and had no friends. But everyone still noticed that he had stopped coming to school. Rumors said that his parents had moved to Penru. Interestingly, that family lived right by the sea, not far from the Miranda Peninsula. Well, I guess now that's not the best time to invite Sandria there again. Who, by the way, still hadn't returned to school. Over time, I began to notice that there were fewer and fewer people in the village. The houses near the sea started to become empty. But many people from the city appeared, especially police officers. They could be seen more and more often near the old school, though sometimes they also walked through the village. While everyone's faces showed only negative emotions, Trivy unexpectedly became interested in origami. He was really good at it. At first, he made planes and boats, but today he managed to make a fox. And honestly, I probably couldn't have done something like that myself. And still, who's speaking? Every time I pass through that place, I hear someone's voice. There's no one nearby. I tried calling out. Once I even stepped into the house's property, but there was no one there. I looked through the window, but it was covered with the curtains. After that time, I started avoiding that house and that street, but my thoughts kept returning to it. One day, after school, I stayed behind for a while. I hid in a bush not far from the house and started watching. About every 10 minutes, someone passed by at once, even a police officer. But no one stopped. Everyone just kept going about their business. Even their facial expressions didn't change. Am I really the only one who hears it? Sandria died. I guess I should write something about it. Express my emotions, my condolences. It was unexpected, even though we all knew about her condition. It all happened in an instant. But people have started disappearing from our village so often that I accepted this fact as if she had simply moved away, like everyone else. Somewhere to Panru or to the capital. And someday, if we really wanted it, we might see her again. Right? Right? Sandra died. And now the village has one person less. Just like in our class, 3 people have already left the school this past week. There weren't many of us to begin with. It all started with 5 farms that were located nearby. 2 in the fields, 1 in the forest, and 2 by the sea. Then a kirk was built, then 3 new buildings appeared around it. One of them is where we study now. One day, a Swedish ship arrived, and they decided to settle here. Everything reminded them of home. The northern White Sea, the forests, the same kind of climate. Only there was more land, a large field to work on. They built a few more houses. Later, investors from near Tartut took an interest in the place, moved here, and built a small factory. The factory needed workers. More houses appeared. There was a lot of fish in our waters, which attracted sailors from Penru. Besides, it was cheaper to live here. A school had to be built. They chose a place by the sea. I spent 8 years of my life there. The last thing that was built in the village was a library and a railway. Unfortunately, there's no station yet. Only in the plans. But when will that happen? I slept very poorly and ate very little. I don't even remember what the weather was like those past few days. Everything around me felt very strange and somehow foreign. In rare moments, I remembered those times back in the old school. I used to sit by the window, looking at the sea, listening to her song. The waves, But now the image of the sea is nothing more than a big gray stain to me. How quickly everything changes.